To those who know him best, Tim is more than a governor. To his wife, Gwen, he is a husband. To his kids, Hope and Gus, he is a dad. To his fellow veterans, he is Sergeant Major Walz.
When you first came to Washington, you were a retired Command Sergeant Major in the Army National Guard.
A 24-year veteran of the National Guard and the Red Bull Division, and a retired Command Sergeant Major.
I'm a retired Command Sergeant Major. I spent 24 years in the Army National Guard.
Hi, my name is Tim Walz, and I'm running for Congress here in southern Minnesota for several important reasons. But today I'd like to tell you about one issue that's very personal to me. I am a retired Command Sergeant Major in the Minnesota National Guard, and after years of firing artillery, I sustained severe inner ear damage.
Before he died, my father took me down and signed me up for the Army, and I ended up spending 24 years in the Army and National Guard. Retired before I ran for Congress, and now have the what I consider to be the responsibility and the privilege of being the highest ranking enlisted personnel ever to serve in Congress. And I'm the Democrats.
What rank was that?
Command Sergeant Major, an artilleryman. So I get a lot more respect for that than Congressman.
Yeah.
And so you left the service or the Guard at what point?
Yeah, I left in April of 2005. And this was, for me, it was just short of 25 years. And it was to run for this office. We were really concerned that we were going to try and do both. There's always the Hatch Act and some of the things that you have to be very careful of. I think most people probably in my unit, and I know as teachers, really didn't know my politics because it wasn't the place to be that way. But I became, I think, after I came back in 2004, much more engaged, making sure that that there was a kind of a civilian voice to things that I felt. I was never engaged in politics, didn't know my county unit chair, never ran for elected office, none of that. But I felt very much that there needed to be a voice there, whether it was for those those soldiers and their families, which is something I obviously, sitting on the VA committee, take very seriously. But I decided to retire and focus full time on running for this office, and then in, of course, November 2006 won.
This is Congressman Tim Walz. He's a retired Command Sergeant Major in the Army Artillery.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Minnesota, the highest ranking enlisted soldier ever to serve in the United States Congress, Command Sergeant Major Tim Walz.
The gentleman from Minnesota is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank the gentleman for this. Greatest privilege I've had in my life was serving this nation for almost 25 years in uniform. I know how important it is to fill our military with qualified, professional, and motivated volunteers. We are blessed in this nation. That's exactly what we have. It's time for us to honor their professionalism and honor their professionalism and honor their professionalism. I am Tim Walz. I'm a public school teacher from Mankato, a football coach. I am a retired Sergeant Major in the Army National Guard.
As a 24-year veteran of the Army National Guard and a retired Command Sergeant Major.
As a retired Sergeant Major in the Army National Guard out of Minnesota.
Retired out as Command Sergeant Major.
I spent 24 years in the military, Congressman, as a Command Sergeant Major.
Tim Walz is one of those everyday people. Coach to the state champs. Teacher of the Year. Command Sergeant Major.
I was an enlisted soldier for all those years, and care of troops and making sure they have the right equipment is paramount.
He's a coach to the state football champs, and he's a Command Sergeant Major in the Army National Guard.
I want to introduce to you my favorite coworker, who achieved the rank of Command Sergeant Major in the Army National Guard, and someone who proudly wears the Red Bull whenever he can. So please join me in welcoming our governor, a veteran, Governor Tim Walz.
17, served 24 years, including in Operation Enduring Freedom, retired as a Command Sergeant Major, which makes him the highest ranking enlisted soldier to ever serve in the United States Congress. That's what
He said, you have a visitor that's coming. This is Congressman Walz from Minnesota. He's a retired Sergeant Major in the Army.
A retired Command Sergeant Major in the National Guard. He represents Minnesota's 1st Congressional District and is the ranking member of the House of Veterans Affairs Committee. a member of American Legion Post 11 in Mankato, Minnesota. He was the creator and sponsor of the American Legion Coin Bill and was a valuable ally in the passage of numerous other veteran-centric legislation. Please give a warm American Legion family welcome to Representative Tim Walz.
Tell him I'm a school teacher, I'm a retired sergeant major.
With service in both the Nebraska National Guard and then the Minnesota National Guard, he retired as a command sergeant major.
I got the opportunity to go out to Walter Reed Army Medical Center and visit some of our wounded warriors. And there was this young man there coming back from Iraq, recovering from his injuries, and they said, this is Congressman Walz. He's a retired sergeant major in the Army. I'm a retired command sergeant major. As a 24-year veteran of the National Guard and a retired command sergeant major. Not just because I'm a retired command sergeant major.
Command sergeant major, an artilleryman. So I get a lot more respect for that than Congressman.
Yeah.
We'll hear from Congressman, Command Sergeant Major Tim Walz. And I was so moved by some of what Tim has said in this. He said he taught these young people in high school, and then he had to lead them in the armed services. So he knows the potential of our young people and what we put at risk when we send them into harm's way without the equipment that they need. He will speak for himself, but I want him to know how much we all appreciate his service to our country, whether it's in the classroom or on the battlefield. Congressman Tim Murphy. Congressman Tim Walz of Minnesota. I was thinking of his state.
That's what happens when you're roommates. Might start looking alike. Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the leadership here. Thank you to my brother-in-arms, Patrick Murphy, who is also my roommate.
J.D. Vance has criticized him as never having been in combat. And,
has he? Has he?
Well,
has J.D. Vance been in combat?
Well, he was over in Iraq, I think, as a public relations officer, as a communications officer. I think that's the case.
I honor his service, and I've never criticized what Tim Walz did when he was in the military. I criticized his retirement decision, and most importantly, Dana, I criticized his lying about his own record, okay? This is a guy who was captured on video saying, I carried a gun in war. He never went to war. This is a guy who's been captured on video. As other people say, he's an Afghanistan veteran. He's a veteran of a war, nodding along in agreement instead of saying, no, I did serve my country and I did it honorably, but I never went to a war zone. I'm not criticizing Tim Walz's service. I'm criticizing the fact that he lied about his service for political gain, Dana. Now, I served in the United States Marine Corps, and you know this. And look, there are a lot of things that I'm proud about. I've never lied about what I did or overstated it because it would be beneficial to me in an election. I think that's what Tim Walz did. That's what I was criticizing. And yes, I do think it's scandalous behavior.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
It's a made-up tale. It's a total fabrication. It never happened. It never happened. This one was invented by a writer. Not this time. It never happened. It's false. It never happened. It's a fake. It's fiction. It's an urban legend that never happened. No way. We got you. Not a chance. Not this time. It never happened. It never happened.